The checkpoint officer at Vel-Saren South Post logged the transit request at 05:44 on what would later become a file that no one could officially explain how to categorize. The requester was a young human woman. Marin Osai, 21 years old, survey certification class 3, listed home world as Earth, which the post's intake system flagged with a small red sigil that meant class 12 origin, which meant the officer, whose name was Dressivar Vel, and who was Arvisi, gray-plated and patient in the way that checkpoint posts made you patient, paid slightly more attention than he otherwise would have. She was carrying a single pack, no survey team, no active mission beacon. She had registered it in passive mode, which was legal but unusual. The Vel-Saren Expanse to the north was class 14, a hard-baked plateau of alkali flats and sand glass ridges and temperature swings that ran from 42 degrees at midday to -8 overnight. The Expanse ran approximately 280 kilometers to the northern transit hub at Vel-Saren Prime. Most transit between south and north moved by air shuttle. The ground crossing existed in the registry as a historical route, last used by an Arvisi survey team 11 years prior. They had taken 9 days and required a full extraction vehicle on the 7th. "Your destination?" Dressivar asked. "Vel-Saren Prime," the human said. "By the ground route?" "Yes." Dressivar looked at the pack. It was large enough. The gear manifest she'd filed listed 2 water reclamation units, a thermal layer set, emergency rations for 12 days, a navigation tablet, and 1 personal item logged only as a transit identification card that was not her own. He looked at her face. She was not agitated. She was not performing calm, which was the thing most people did when they were nervous and trying not to show it. She was simply present in the way that people who have already decided something are present. The decision finished, the action next. Her eyes were clear and slightly reddened at the edges, the way eyes were when someone had slept recently but not enough and not well. Any stated purpose for the ground crossing? She considered the question for exactly 1 second. "Personal," she said. Dressivar noted this in the log. He cleared the transit. He would think about that single word, personal, for 11 days, which was how long it took her. The Vel-Saren Expanse opened north of the checkpoint like a door, swung wide onto nothing. Marin Os walked into it at 06:00. She had spent the prior 20 minutes redistributing her pack weight without thinking about it, her hands doing the work her mind was too occupied to supervise. Her mind was somewhere else. It had been somewhere else for 3 weeks, since the message arrived on her survey tablet on a jungle survey rotation on the other side of the sector. A short official note from a transit authority on Earth, the kind of note that used precise administrative language to say that her brother Davin had been killed in a construction accident at the Orcs processing facility on Vethra Station, that his remains were recoverable, that next of kin notification was complete. She had read it 3 times. She had filed her survey report. She had completed her rotation. She had not gone home. She had come here instead to this expanse, because she needed something to cross and because she could not explain it any other way than that. Grief had a direction in her. It pushed outward, not inward, and if she stayed still she would break in ways she would not recover from. The Expanse was 280 kilometers of terrain that would require everything she had. That was exactly what she required. On day 1, she covered 31 kilometers. The alkali flat was hard-packed and pale, reflecting heat upward from a surface that the midday sun turned white. She moved in the morning hours and the evening hours and rested through the deep midday, which was not weakness but arithmetic. The thermal layer kept the overnight cold manageable. She ate half a ration pack at dusk and logged the day's distance in the navigation tablet with the same notation she used for survey work. Distance, heading, water status, notable terrain. She had done it that way because if she noted anything personal, she might not stop. The sand-glass storm came on day 3, which was earlier than expected but not early enough to matter. She saw the color change on the horizon, the air going copper-brown at the base, the light flattening above it, and had 40 minutes of walking before the wall arrived. She found a wind shadow on the lee side of a sand-glass ridge, a notch barely wide enough, and pulled the thermal layer over her head and sealed it and lay flat against the rock with her pack between her and the wind. The storm hit like a hand pressing down. The sound was sustained and mineral, a grinding that was not quite noise and not quite silence. The sand-glass particles moved at speeds that stripped bare aluminum. They would find every seal and test it. She sealed every seal. She lay in the dark of the thermal layer and breathed slowly and thought about nothing useful. Her mind kept returning to Davin's face, which she had last seen 7 months ago over a comm connection, a brief call while she was prepping for the jungle rotation. He had looked good. He had been tired from the processing facility shifts, but he had laughed at something she said. She couldn't remember what, and then the call ended because she had gear to pack. That was the last call. She hadn't called the week before departure because she was busy. She could have called. She had thought about it and not done it. The storm ran for 4 hours. When it passed, she unsealed the layer and stood up and checked her gear and walked. Day 5 brought the water problem. Both reclamation units were pulling condensate from overnight humidity, which was adequate for survival, but not for the pace she was keeping. She had been covering 26 to 30 kilometers per day on an intake that was sustainable at 15. The units were designed for stationary or slow-moving use. She was neither. She found the problem at midday on day 5, when she checked the output levels against her consumption log, and did the arithmetic that told her she would run short on day 8, which was 2 to 3 days before the northern hub depending on terrain. She sat with this for approximately 2 minutes. Then she started paying attention to the terrain in a different way. The Vel-Saren Expanse was not waterless. It was water-poor in a specific way. The moisture concentrated in the subsurface under the alkali crust wherever there was an old drainage channel, which showed on the surface as a slight color shift, the alkali going from white to pale gray at the edges of the old flow. She had seen this on survey data and filed it without thinking much about it. Now she thought about it. She adjusted her heading to run parallel to one of the drainage channels she could see on the navigation tablet. 2 kilometers off her direct path. On day 6, she found a section of crust with the gray color shift and stopped and used the flat edge of her pack frame to break through, not deep, just past the hardpan, and found damp alkali clay underneath. She packed it into her smaller reclamation unit's intake, ran the filter cycle twice, and tested the output. It was bitter and mineral, not good but within safe margins. She added a day to her schedule, adjusted her pace, and kept moving. That night she took out the transit card and looked at it in the light of the thermal layer's inner glow. It was Davin's station transit card from Vethris, worn at the corners, with his name printed in standard script and a small photograph on the reverse. A young man with dark eyes and a slight squint from the station lighting, looking at the camera with the expression of someone who has been told to stay still for the photograph and is not entirely comfortable with it. She had not cried yet. She was aware of this as a fact without being able to change it. "I'm crossing," she said to the card, her voice low. "You would have thought this was unnecessary. You would have been correct." She paused. "I'm doing it anyway." She put the card back in the inner pocket against her sternum and lay down and went asleep. The Vel-Sar pack animals came on day 8. She had seen their tracks for 2 days, 6-limbed, broad-padded, moving in coordinated patterns that were not random. The Vel-Sar were a documented scavenger species on Class 14 arid terrain, gray-brown scaled, low to the ground, running in packs of 6 to 12. They were not documented as aggressive toward beings larger than themselves. But she was now moving slowly. Her water discipline had cost her pace, and slow-moving things in open terrain attracted attention from pack scavengers, which was not aggression but was a problem. She counted 8 of them when they settled into a parallel track 40 meters to her east. They stayed at 40 meters. She had no weapons. She had a pack frame and a utility tool and whatever she could improvise. She did not speed up, which was the instinct to avoid, because it would not work and would cost her energy she did not have. Instead, she watched them for 20 minutes while she walked. Their behavior was diagnostic. They matched her pace exactly, which meant they were evaluating her. The 2 at the front of the pack were larger and kept their heads lower than the rest. That was the leadership structure, not aggression. The 6 behind were smaller and more erratic in their movement, which was curiosity, not hunger. They made no calls she could hear. They were watching her the way she was watching them. She stopped walking. The pack stopped. She stood still in the open heat for 4 minutes. She was not threatening. She was not retreating. She was not performing. She was simply there, which was the thing that did not compute for a pack scavenger, because everything alive in this terrain either fled or was already down. Standing still while being watched was not a thing prey animals did. The 2 leaders shifted their heads up. She started walking again, not faster, not slower, in the same direction she had been going. After 90 meters, the pack peeled away east and did not return. She noted the encounter in the navigation tablet under notable terrain. Day 10, she came through a ridge line and saw the northern hub at Vel-Saren Prime in the late afternoon haze. A cluster of low structures and communications arrays and a landing pad, golden in the angled light. She calculated the remaining distance at 11 kilometers. She walked them in the next 2.5 hours. The officer at Vel-Saren Prime's transit receiving post was a Korathi, gray-plated and large, named something the translation system rendered as Overseer Deathworlders. He looked up from his station when she came through the outer gate and logged her arrival at 1923 on day 11 of her transit. His system flagged the transit ID from the South Post, and he read the file. Marin Osai, he said, ground crossing Vel-Saren Expanse south to north. He looked at her. She was sunburned at every exposed edge, lips cracked, pack worn to the frame at 2 contact points, boots scraped down to the underlayer at the toe. She was not limping. 11 days, he said. 11 days, she agreed. He had questions. Standard transit, clearance, destination, purpose. She answered them clearly and without elaboration. The previous recorded ground crossing of the full expanse took 9 days with an extraction vehicle on day 7, he said, not quite as a statement, not quite as a question. I read that in the registry, she said. You completed it solo, without active beacon, and you ran short on water on day 5. I found subsurface condensate at an old drainage site. It was in the survey data. Deathworlders wrote this into the file. He wrote it carefully, the way you wrote things when you were not certain what category they belonged to. Then he looked at the personal item she had declared in the manifest, the transit ID card that was not hers, now tucked back in her inner pocket, barely visible at the zipper edge. He wrote one more line in the file. He could not, in standard transit record format, note what she had carried inside the crossing or what it had cost her to finish. He wrote what he could. He filed the record. The last line read, crossing completed, no extraction required, condition on arrival operational. Dresevar Vel received the confirmation at Vel-Saren South Post 14 hours later, when the system updated the transit file to closed. He read through it. He read it twice. He sat for a moment with the record open on his screen. He thought about the words she had used at the checkpoint, personal, and about the transit ID card that wasn't hers, and about 11 days alone in 280 kilometers of Class 14 terrain on a passive beacon, and one reason she hadn't given him and he had not asked for. He closed the file. He made one addition to his own post log, separate from the official record, which was not required but which he felt was accurate. It read, "She was always going to make it. I should have known that when she came through the gate. The question was never whether she would finish. The question was what she was finishing for." He did not submit that note anywhere. He saved it locally and did not delete it. He thought that was the appropriate response, and he was right.